So remember, in the accounting cycle, we use source documents to enter each transaction, first into a journal and then a ledger book with T accounts. Ledgers are books of final entry containing the T accounts of the business in which transactions are posted in the form of debit and credits. Ledger accounts look like a T because they are divided into two sides, debit side and a credit side. There are three ledger books that contain T accounts. That is the sales ledger, the purchases ledger, and the general ledger. The sales ledger contains accounts receivables, purchases ledger accounts payables, and the general ledger real accounts and nominal accounts. Accounts receivables and accounts payables are known as personal accounts, whereas real accounts and nominal accounts are referred to as non-personal accounts. Posting to ledgers requires taking information from the journals and entering the information in the relevant T accounts according to the double entry rules. So simply follow the instructions in the journals. For example, your general journal, which states which side of the account you enter the information on for each transaction, debit side or credit side. Practice this and you will be able to post to all your ledger accounts in no time. Okay, so today's topic is going to be posting to ledgers. That would be your T accounts. So we're going to do a very simple video for you to follow. And we are going to use one of your activities in the workbook. So basically, posting to ledgers, we are starting with posting from the general journal. The general journal gives you the instructions in terms of which side of the T account to go on. So do you debit or do you credit? So the general journal tells us which accounts to debit and to credit. So basically we do all of our thinking in terms of the double entry rules for the journal, but then posting to ledger, all we are going to do is to follow those rules. So let's start with June the 1st. We're going to deal with June the 1st, starting with the bank account. So basically, whenever you're posting, you look at whatever the account is, in this case, the bank account. And this tells you to go to the bank account, which is this one here. You know it's a bank account because it's named bank account on top here. This tells you the name of the account. And your instructions from your general journal says to go on the debit side. So what does that mean? This is your debit side. So you're going on the debit side of your bank account and you're just putting the information. June the 1st, what would the detail be? Very simply, the detail is the other account in the transaction. More specifically, if you are on the debit side of the account, then your detail is the account that was credited. So if you look at our transaction, we are in the bank account on the debit side. So our detail is going to be capital, which is the other account that was credited. Now it's very, very simple for June the 1st because there are only two accounts. So automatically, if you are in the bank account, then you know that your detail is going to be capital. So you put capital and then the amount is 50,000 and it's as simple as that. Now we go to the next account on June the 1st and that is your capital account. Which side did they say to go on? The credit side. So that means you're going to go on this side, credit side. 50,000. So you're just putting the date. What is the detail again? Since we are on the credit side, it's the other account, which is bank, or more specifically, the account that was debited. So your detail will just be bank. and the amount. Now note, if the account's name is capital, your detail cannot also be capital. It must be the other account. And when there are two accounts, it's very easy. It's just the other or the second account. So there you have for June the 1st, your two accounts, bank and capital. Notice that once again in the bank account, the detail is capital, but in the capital account, the detail is bank. Notice as well that they are the opposite sides. So in the bank account, the information was written on the debit side, and for the capital account, it's written on the credit side. So for all your transactions in your journal, what you simply do, identify the account like we identified bank. Go to whichever side they instruct you to go on. So for bank account, they said go on the debit side. For capital account, they said go on the credit side. So you just follow those instructions. You enter the date on whichever side it is. Your detail is always the other account. And that's it. So very, very, very simple, especially when there are only two accounts. There are some cases though, where you have more than two accounts in the double entry. For example, June the 5th, what you would see here is you have three accounts. You have purchases, Mr. Carrington, and bank. So what happens when you have three accounts? It is not as simple as the two accounts like June the 1st, but once you follow the steps as I'm going to go through with you, then it will be very simple. So as I said, we are using June the 5th. So June the 5th with the three accounts. And what we are going to do, we're going to start with the purchases account. And what we see in our instructions is we have to go to the purchases account and debit the purchases account $20,000. So you have to keep that in mind. That is your primary goal right now. So we are looking for the purchases account. We find the purchases account. You're seeing it down there. So this is the purchases account here. And you are going on the debit side. So your debit side. And you put the date. So you have June the 5th. What would be your detail? So remember what we said. Since we are on the debit side of the purchases account, your detail is going to be the account or accounts that the opposite has occurred. So they have been credited. So once you are on the debit side, you're going to look for the accounts that were credited. In this case, I said were because there are two accounts that were credited. That is Mr. Carrington and the bank. So therefore, for your purchases account, you are going to have two details. That will be Mr. Carrington and bank. So you're going to just follow the instructions simply. You're still on the debit side for purchases. You have June the 5th. You're going to put Mr. Carrington. That's your first detail. And how much was it for Mr. Carrington? $15,000. So the amount is $15,000. And then your second detail would be your bank account that was also credited. So you put June the 5th again, bank this time as your detail. And how much is the amount for bank? $5,000. So you just put $5,000 there. Have you achieved your original goal? Can you remember what the original goal was? The original goal was to go to your purchases account and debit it $20,000. So let's look at our purchases account, our debit side, and we have a debit for $15,000 and a debit for $5,000, which in total gives you a debit of $20,000. So in other words, we have achieved our goal, and we have debited the purchases account by 20,000. So we're going to go to the next account, which would be Mr. Carrington. And what is the instruction for Mr. Carrington? Go to the credit side of Mr. Carrington's account and credit him $15,000. So you're going to Mr. Carrington. Here's Mr. Carrington's account, and here's the credit side. So we're going on the credit side this time. So the credit side of his account, and was that correct? Yes, credit side. And we are going to put the date. What would be the detail? Once again, we are on the credit side of Mr. Carrington's account. So which means our detail has to be the account that is debited, the account or accounts. So we are going to look at our transaction and how many accounts were debited? Only one account. So we have that one account, which is purchases. Purchases will therefore be your detail for Mr. Carrington. But before you put the amount is not 20,000. Remember what the original goal was? The original goal is to go to Mr. Carrington's account, credit side, and credit him how much? $15,000. 15,000. So that means that the amount will be 15,000. So this is how it should appear. You're looking at Mr. Carrington's account. You're seeing June 5th, the account that was debited, purchases. How much are we crediting Mr. Carrington's account? 15,000. So we have successfully achieved our goal for Mr. Carrington's account. So we're going to move to the last account, which would be your bank account. And the instruction says to go to the bank account. On your credit side, credit your bank account 5,000. So remember the figure, $5,000, right? So 5,000. So you're going your bank account. Here's your bank account here, blocked off the other accounts for you. Your bank account, you're going on the credit side. So we're going on the credit side. That will be over here on this side. And on the credit side, we have June the 5th. The detail, since we are on the credit side, would be the account that was debited. As we saw before, the only account that was debited in this transaction is your purchases account. So your detail is once again going to be purchases. And the amount, remember how much did we say we were going to put into our bank account? $5,000. So this amount is not going to be the 20,000. It's going to be the 5,000 that is next to your bank account. So 5,000. And this is where you have now posted to your bank account. Okay, so looking at June the 5th, 3 accounts you have now posted to all 3 accounts. Note that your credit posted accounts, so you credited your bank and you credited Mr. Carrington, adds up to 20,000 because you credited bank 5,000 and you credited Mr. Carrington 15,000. That equals to 20,000. And then your purchases account was debited, total once again of 20,000 because these 2 accounts, Mr. Carrington and bank, were credited, and that adds up to the 20,000. So your observation can also be you never post, once you have more than 2 accounts, so in this example, we have 3 accounts, you don't post the largest figure. You don't ever see the 20,000 actually posted in the account. What you would see would be for the large one, which is purchases where you needed to have the 20,000, you will see 2 accounts that add up to the 20,000. And that is how you would post. Just make sure, follow the instructions, just do it step by step, and it should be simple enough for you to do.